The silence in this apartment is deafening. It wasn't supposed to be like this. This wasn't the fairy tale ending he promised. Where did it all go wrong? How did I end up here alone with nothing but a shattered heart for company? I was blinded by his charm, his touch, the way he made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. Now, the only thing he ignites is a fire of anger in my veins. He promised me forever, swore I was the one. His words were empty, hollow pronouncements meant to lure me into his web of deceit. The irony isn't lost on me. The man who swore he couldn't live without me, the man for whom I destroyed my family, can barely spare me a glance. He's too busy whispering sweet nothings into another woman's ear, his hands tracing the same patterns on her skin that he once traced on mine. I see the telltale signs, the lingering perfume, the misplaced phone calls, the carefully crafted lies. He thinks I'm oblivious, too caught up in my own misery to notice his indiscretions. But the truth, like a bitter pill, is impossible to swallow. He's a mirror, reflecting the very actions that brought me to this desolate place. And what do I have to show for it? A broken heart, a shattered family, a future shrouded in uncertainty. The air crackled with tension, thick and suffocating. It was supposed to be a simple dinner with friends, a night of laughter and shared memories. Instead, it became the night my world came crashing down. My husband, Mark, sat across from me, his face an emotionless mask. But I saw it, the flicker of pain in his eyes, the subtle tremor in his hands. He knew. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The carefully constructed facade I had built, the web of lies I had spun, it all unraveled in that instant. He didn't say a word. Not at first. He simply stared at me, his gaze piercing through the carefully constructed walls I had erected around my heart. It was then, in the suffocating silence of that crowded restaurant, that I saw the depth of his pain. The love he had always held for me, the love I had so carelessly trampled on, was now laced with an unbearable agony. A single tear rolled down his cheek, a silent testament to the heartbreak I had caused. My own tears flowed freely now, hot and heavy with shame. I had betrayed him in the worst way possible, shattering the foundation of trust upon which our marriage was built. He finally spoke, his voice a low rumble that sent shivers down my spine. "How could you?" The words were barely audible above the din of the restaurant, but they struck me with the force of a thunderclap. There was no anger in his voice, only a profound sadness that cut me to the core. "Mark, I stammered, desperate to explain, to offer some semblance of an excuse for my betrayal. But the words wouldn't come. How could I possibly justify the unforgivable? "I think it's best if you leave," he said, his voice devoid of any emotion. The silence in this apartment is deafening. It wasn't the passionate love nest he promised. It was never filled with the intoxicating laughter and whispered secrets I had envisioned. Instead, it's a cold, sterile space, a constant reminder of my shattered dreams. The luxurious furnishings, chosen with such care and excitement, now mock me with their emptiness. Each piece is a painful reminder of the life I threw away, the family I destroyed. His presence, once a source of comfort and excitement, is now a fleeting shadow, a ghost that haunts the hallways. Sometimes late at night, when the city outside is finally still, I hear them. The echoes of laughter, the pitter-patter of tiny feet, the comforting murmur of bedtime stories, ghosts of a life I once had, a life I so carelessly threw away. I see their faces in my dreams, my children's eyes wide with confusion and hurt, their smiles replaced by a sadness that mirrors my own. The memory of their goodnight kisses, the feel of their small arms wrapped tightly around me, it's a constant ache in my chest. I long to hold them again, to tell them I love them, to beg for their forgiveness. But they are gone, living their lives without me, their laughter a distant memory that haunts my waking hours. He promised me the world, whispered sweet nothings about a life filled with adventure and passion. He painted a picture of us hand in hand, conquering the world, our love a shield against any storm. But the reality is far different. He surrounds himself with people, a sea of unfamiliar faces, their laughter grating on my nerves. They are beautiful and carefree, their lives a whirlwind of parties and excitement, the very life I craved. Yet, I feel invisible, a ghost in my own right. He introduces me with a careless wave of his hand, his touch distant, his eyes already searching for the next distraction. I see the way they look at me, their smiles strained, their eyes filled with pity and judgment. He's late again. It's become a familiar pattern, a cruel game he plays with my heart. The hours tick by, each one an eternity filled with anxiety and self-doubt. My phone remains silent, a mocking reminder of his indifference. As I stare at my reflection in the mirror, I hardly recognize the woman staring back at me. My eyes are dull and lifeless, my skin sallow, my once bright smile replaced by a permanent frown. The weight of my choices, the consequences of my actions are etched onto my face, a constant reminder of the woman I've become. I am trapped in a cycle of my own making, a prisoner of my own desires. It was a Saturday morning, and the sun was shining mercilessly through the gaps in my blinds. The remnants of last night's fight with him were scattered around the apartment. A broken vase, a shattered picture frame, and a silence so profound it was almost unbearable. Desperate for fresh air, I decided to take a walk. It wasn't unusual for me to seek solace in the anonymity of the city, but this time my feet led me to a place I swore I'd never go back to. My old neighborhood. The familiar streets felt both foreign and comforting. As I walked past my old house, a wave of nausea washed over me. Fresh paint shone on the restored facade, and the garden, once overgrown and neglected, was a riot of colorful blooms. And then I saw him. He looked different. Gone was the haunted, defeated look I had become so accustomed to seeing in his eyes. In its place was a newfound confidence, a quiet strength that radiated from him like an aura. He was fit, his shoulders broader, his movements exuding an energy I had forgotten he possessed. His hair, once peppered with streaks of gray, was now a rich dark brown, and his eyes, no longer clouded with pain, sparkled with life. Beside him, holding his hand as they walked, was a woman. She was beautiful, with kind eyes and a warm smile that reached all the way to her eyes. She wasn't me. My heart lurched as I noticed two figures racing towards Mark. My children. My beautiful, precious children who I had so selfishly abandoned. They were taller now, their features losing their baby softness, but their smiles, those bright, infectious smiles, were instantly recognizable. They threw their arms around Mark, showering him with kisses, and the woman beside him laughed, pulling them both into a warm embrace. The sight of my children happy, thriving, loved, it was like a knife twisting in my gut. I had convinced myself that they were better off without me, that my absence would save them from the pain of watching their mother crumble. But the truth was, I was the one who couldn't bear to witness their joy, knowing I was the one who had ripped their family apart. As I watched them walk away, a family whole and complete, my eyes were drawn to a sight that sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. Parked at the curb, gleaming under the midday sun, was a sleek silver sedan. It was the car Mark had always wanted, the one we could never afford because of my extravagant spending habits. The car that symbolized the successful life he was now living, a life he had built for himself, without me. It was a stark reminder of everything I had thrown away, everything I had destroyed with my own two hands, the life I had craved, the life filled with excitement and passion, paled in comparison to the simple, honest joy that radiated from Mark and his new family. The irony was not lost on me. I had chased after a fantasy, a mirage of happiness, only to find myself alone, broken, and filled with a regret so profound it threatened to consume me whole. Regret. It's a bitter pill I swallow every morning, the taste lingering on my tongue throughout the day. It's a slow poison seeping into my veins, paralyzing me with its insidious tendrils. Each day that passes is a stark reminder of my colossal mistake, a never-ending cycle of what-ifs and if-onlys that play on repeat in my mind. The life I so carelessly threw away, the life I thought was mundane and suffocating, now shimmers with a lost brilliance. I long for the ordinary, the comforting rhythm of family dinners, the chaotic symphony of bedtime routines, the quiet contentment of a shared life built on love and trust. But those days are gone, vanished like smoke in the wind, and in their place is a deafening silence, a void that echoes with the ghosts of my past. Memories, once a source of comfort and joy, now haunt me like specters in the night. I see Mark's face everywhere I look, in the crowded streets, in the faces of strangers, in my dreams. His laughter, once music to my ears, now echoes with a painful irony, a constant reminder of the happiness I so carelessly destroyed. I replay our last moments together over and over in my mind, each time hoping for a different outcome, but the ending remains the same. His eyes, filled with a pain I had never witnessed before, still haunt me, a constant accusation of my betrayal. The children, too, are ever present in my thoughts. Their innocent faces, their infectious laughter, their unconditional love, all gone, ripped away by my selfish actions. I long to hold them, to tell them how sorry I am, to beg for their forgiveness, but the words stick in my throat, choked by the weight of my guilt. The future stretches before me, bleak and unforgiving. The life I had envisioned, the life of passion and excitement, has crumbled into dust, leaving behind a barren wasteland of regret and despair. The man I left everything for is a stranger, his affections fleeting, his promises empty. I am adrift in a sea of uncertainty, clinging to the shattered remnants of a life I no longer recognize. The guilt and shame are a heavy cloak suffocating me, stealing my breath. I am lost, alone, and utterly broken, and the worst part is I have no one to blame but myself. Deep down, buried beneath the layers of regret and self-loathing, a flicker of hope still flickers. A yearning for redemption, for a chance to right my wrongs, to somehow mend the shattered pieces of my past. But the rational part of me knows that some things, once broken, can never be truly fixed. The damage is done, the trust shattered, the love I once held so carelessly now a distant memory. All that remains is the bitter aftertaste of regret, a constant reminder of the high price I have paid for my mistakes. And as I sit here, alone in the silence of this empty apartment, I am left with nothing but the crushing weight of my choices and the faintest glimmer of hope that someday, somehow, I might find a way to forgive myself. The weight of my choices presses down on me, a physical ache that permeates every fiber of my being. I am lost, adrift in a sea of regret. The laughter of my children now echoes only in the hollow chambers of my heart. The warmth of Mark's love, a love I took for granted, is a distant memory. The silence of this apartment is a constant torment. Each tick of the clock amplifies the emptiness that surrounds me. The echoes of yesterday haunt me, whispering tales of a love I threw away, a family I shattered, a life I destroyed. The guilt is relentless, its icy fingers wrapped around my heart. I am drowning in regret, the waves pulling me away from redemption. The pain is unbearable, a constant ache. I long for a second chance to undo the damage. But deep down, I know some things, once broken, can never be repaired. The trust is shattered, the love tarnished, the family scarred by my actions. I am left with nothing but the bitter ashes of my mistakes.